Hello and welcome, I'm Kira Scrivener, and today I'm going to be talking about Asian Heritage Month and the Asian Readathon. This is hosted by the one and only Sydney, and I think it's my third year participating ever since the beginning, so I'm really excited to be doing it again. I love reading Asian books around the year. So two books that I really hope I'm going to read, because they've been on my shelf since the beginning of my channel, and that is The World We Found and A Thousand Splendid Suns by Claude Husseini. Claude Husseini is one of my favorite authors, despite the fact that I've only read one of his books. The Kite Runner I read in grade 12. A lot of people read classics, and I love that we read this book instead of like 1984, story about the Afghan Revolution and kind of how the proxy war between the United States and Russia kind of destroyed the Middle East. Also a great coming of age story where he kind of talks about his own journey. Well, it's fictionalized version, but where Amir really goes from person who is willing to sacrifice anyone for his own gains to really understanding what love and what all of these things does. And I'm sure that he will do a great job in his other books. I've been always a little like, I know I'm gonna love them so much that it's really hard to walk into them, and now that it's been so much longer, it's even harder. I love books that take place over generations, that take over years. This looks at a bunch of 5 students that were students in Bombay in like the 1970s, and then it takes place in like the 2000s when they are grown up and how they change and the way that the world changed them. There's also some graphic novels, because I've been reading a lot of graphic novels lately, that I want to put some on my thing. Persepolis is by Marjan Surapi, and she is an Iranian writer and cartoonist. I've always wanted to read the book, and I've always been a little intimidated. It does with the Iranian Revolution of 1979 when she was 10 years old, and goes through her story, and I believe kind of like the Kite Runner, she also returns and kind of sees where that goes, and I'm excited. And also I want to give another chance to Monstrous by Marjorie M. Lewin. She is a Taiwanese author, and I read it right when I was starting getting into graphic novels, and I couldn't understand the plot points, and I think that I found it way too confusing. And it's been like 4 years, and I think I'm much better for graphic novels and much better in literature in general. So it's a story that a lot of people love, and I think that I can appreciate it now in a way that I couldn't 4 years ago. I also really love poetry, and I think that poetry is one of those things that it transpasses all culture and stuff like that, so it's really interesting to read. I'm currently finishing up Black Dog, Black Night. This is a poetry collection I've been reading for the last 2 years. It's 225 pages, which doesn't sound very long, but poetry takes such an emotional toll, and you really have to spend time with it, that, you know, it's something that I got at the library probably like over 10 times, and I'll read like 20 to 30 poems and I'll put them back. So I'm in my final stages now, and I love it. It looks at Vietnamese poetry, so I want to do similar to that. I came across Spring Essence, which is also Vietnamese poetry, well, searching this up, by Ho Shin Hoan, and she was a woman who was a poet from 1772 until 1822. So it's also really cool that this is a woman who lived so many years ago. We so often don't hear women's voices, especially women of color, so I'm very excited. Brother Enemy is a Korean war poetry, so this looks at both South and North Korean, and it's a collection, and I'm really excited to look at this. War poetry is just some of my favorite, and I love that we get to hear from both sides of the war and how brother and enemy. One of the short stories that I love the most is The Sniper by Liam O'Flaherty, which takes a similar aspect of this, looking both sides. More Than Skin Deep is Ali Shan. She is a Chinese Canadian, and she's writing specifically about her own experience of being an immigrant to Canada from China, and how assimilation and culture and finding your own place in Canadian culture. Night Sky with Exit Wounds is by Ocean Vuong. Even the Page is White by Vivek Shea. Vivek is a trans woman Canadian. This month I read She of the Mountains and I'm Afraid of Men, and both of them blew me away. Made me cry, made me think. She writes a lot about the queer experience and what it means to be queer and of color, and especially a lot of things that don't talk about, you know, insecurities and boundaries and things like that. Hagar Before the Occupation, Hagar After the Occupation by Amal Al-Jawri. And she's Iraqi, and she actually had to leave Iraq from persecution, and she wrote these poems, and some of them she wrote before the invasion of Iraq, and some of them she read after. The title really hits me. Not only is it a beautiful title, Hagar is a character in the Quran, she's also a character in the Bible, which is where I'm familiar from her, and the mother of the Muslim people. So I'm very excited to read the story and read a story that I'm always interested in that divide as well. I know many of my friends who are Muslim and we have similar stories, but there's different takes on them. So I'm excited to be reading this and the allusion to a story that I'm familiar with. The Museum of Innocence takes place in 1970s Turkey, and I'm really excited for the Turkey. I don't know, depending on what people divide into, is part of Europe or is part of Asia, but I think that it's interesting and cool to read stories that are not often represented in these. So it's 1970s. I'm excited. The Secret Lives of Mothers and Daughters by Anita Kashwa. She is Canadian and she lives in Ottawa, which is where I grew up, and is looking specifically at different, I love looking at the different experiences. Older sister, not necessarily related, by Jenny Haejun Wills, and she's Korean, and this is a nonfiction book about a memoir and about experiences, and I think about adoption and how you find family outside of your family. Beauty of Your Face by Safar Mustafa. She's Palestinian, which again, a voice that I would love to hear. And I began this book in August and it was really good. I was dealing with a lot of time and it deals with a school shooting, so I didn't continue on at the time, but I am excited to continue this book. She's a principal of an all-girls Muslim school, and it has a shooter come in who's trying to kill them, and she is brought to reflection about her life now and also her life growing up and what it means to be a Palestinian woman who wears a hijab in the United States. I'm editing right now and it's very, very obvious to me that I was super out of it. I hope that you didn't notice, but in case you did, I am sorry. I am very, very intensely passionate about Asian literature. The fact that I seemed completely out of it, I was losing my train of thought, I was like talking in this really breathy voice and I kept on like staring off into the things. I tried to edit it out because I was so much in pain that I kept on like not finishing my sentence. So I'm sorry. I apologize. I was trying to like go through it despite the fact that I was trying to like go through the pain. I was like, I can do this. Chronic pain, real update, not doing well. But I wanted to do this video and I thought it was an important video to do, and I probably should have refilmed it. I don't think I have the energy, so we're just gonna go with it. I am sorry and I apologize for lack of cohesiveness. If you have questions, please ask in the comments and I will answer, because writing is more of my forte when talking when not feeling well. And apparently I just gave up before I finished the outro because that's the state that I was in. So happy reading, writing. If you are participating, I would love to hear your videos. I would love to hear your thoughts. Give me recommendations. Put your videos in the description or in the comments if you want to. I love talking to you guys, and I will talk to you next time.